Welcome to the Intentionists podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Amy Schreiber.
And I'm Hilary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries.
Hi, you're listening to episode 68, and we are very excited to welcome back Master Numerologist Remington Donovan. This week, he talks to Hilary about the numerical energy of the coming year and decade. So this episode is full of fascinating mystical information and also those practical applications for integrating it into modern life. So I really enjoyed this episode. I know that you will too. They discuss compassion and acceptance as a hallmark of four energy and 2020 as a year of forgiveness, unconditional love, and blessings. And they explore the virtues and vices associated with these numbers like 4 and also the energy of 2 and 20 for the coming decade. They talk about the gifts and challenges of the upcoming eclipse season as well, and discuss it as this time for letting go and making leaps in personal growth with the death-rebirth energy that comes with eclipses. And then they close by discussing the necessity of a spiritual practice or a way to experience your soul to stay fulfilled in this age of information overload. And they use selfless service as an example. So Remington Donovan is a master numerologist, mystical Kabbalist, tarot diviner, astrologer, seer, and teacher based in Los Angeles, California. He was born into the tradition of Swami Satchidananda, learning meditation and yoga directly from him at a very early age. And he began his formal training in the Western mystery tradition as a teenager, studying under an adept master for 22 years, practicing the Hermetic Kabbalistic wisdom of the ancients. He uses these technologies and talents to empower, inspire, and guide individuals to unlock their deepest spiritual potential in private readings and group sessions locally and worldwide. His workshops include numerology, tarot therapy, geomancy, astrology, and kundalini yoga and meditation, to name a few. Remington's unique and contemporary approach to the teachings of kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan, combined with his deep esoteric knowledge and wisdom, establishes him as a rising voice and international teacher in this space. And you can find Remington online at remingtondonovan.com, RemingtonDonovan.com, and on Instagram at The Mystical Arts. And without further delay, here is Remington and Hilary.
Remington, thank you so much for joining me today on The Intentionist. I'm just so happy to have you back. We loved having you last year.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be back. You always have very thoughtful, insightful questions and commentaries. So you make my job really, really easy with it. And it's a lot of fun because you like your questions. So
well, thanks.
But I know we kind of wind up just talking and it goes where it goes.
It's great. So I want to talk to you today for our listeners to give them some information about numerology for this big 2020 that's coming. It seems like it's going to be a big year. It's like, I know when you came on last year, we talked about 2019 as the year of 3. And I remember when we talked that you talked about how this was really the year about going pro and shining and refining and becoming an expert. So what can we expect from 2020?
Well, there's a lot, and it's funny with the numerology as I work with it, which is sort of becomes a 24/7 process, not in an obsessive way, but it's a creative process for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking these concepts of 4 and seeing where it opens up, and just that's why I always have to I have lists of stuff on different numbers that I make a note this completely applies to the number 4 or 5 or whatever it is. So more keeps being revealed to me as I delve into it, but overall where we're at and what the energy is really 4 is an energy of love and it's an energy of compassion.
And for our listeners, you get to a 4 by adding all the numbers in 2020 up, which ends up being 4.
Yeah, literally it's 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0. We know what happens when we add zeros. So in this case, it's like 2 plus 2. So we have 4. And 4 is this number of very deep, true compassion and mercy of the universe, of God. And it's love, but it's like love with a capital L. So it's a higher sort of unconditional love, where true compassion isn't always so caught up in the result and the outcome. So for us as individuals, this energy is something that we really could come into, really, to me, what feels like a very sort of high / kind of blissful, or I should say elevated and blissful state in consciousness. Because if we start by first directing that compassion and acceptance towards ourselves, then it's easier to accept others and both. But if we get into a sort of an energy field and a mindset of accepting, and this is a year to just finally forgive yourself, to forgive others, and to let go of the future and your stresses. 4 is really the energy. It's the heart center, and it's the energy of really being in the moment, right? So all of these sort of spiritual messages that I feel like I picked up from being a child of like sort of hippie spiritual culture, and it's like, be here now. That was like a big book. And then I know there's some guy, Eckhart Tolle. I do not follow or read or am particularly interested in any of his stuff. Not that I'm like shut off to it. It's just not in my orb. But I always hear this message. He basically is just rehashing those concepts. But being here now is just like, if we can truly accept that we're exactly where we need to be, how we need to be, and where we are, we let go of so much tension, fear, anxiety, insecurity, and regrets. And this is a year to get into that pure state. And when we really step into our hearts, we're going to see huge shifts, like for ourselves as individuals. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is when I really applied this to my life, and I just really said, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and everything is as it should be, and everything's like right on time. I wound up always being at the right place at the right time. And before I was really in that alignment, I always sort of had this energy, or in my mind, it's easy to create a narrative. Like somehow I'm jinxed, or you can get heavier about it. Like you're super cursed, or you're always a day late or $1 short. And we're going to come out of that sort of chaos. So on an individual level and on a world level, I hope that we see, just on its simplest note, tremendous love and compassion. Because we
That's
don't
really
live in a world of like understanding. And also, I just posted on Instagram, but I finished reading this book called The Problem with Everything by Megan Doom, I think it's pronounced, which really was a book on feminism. But I really like how she shows how closed-minded like all these different demographics and quote unquote sides of the spectrum are through social media, because now we can just sort of hashtag anything. We can just attack something without getting any of the facts. And it's really, now, not that she wrote about this, but the more I think about it, just because it's on my radar now, because I just finished it, it's like we really are going in the opposite direction of acceptance and compassion.
Right. The pendulum has swung so far with all the call out culture. And did you see that video of Barack Obama talking about this?
Yeah,
he was basically calling out call out culture. And I was like, yes, finally.
Yeah, well, I'm an anti-woke culture person, I guess I would say. But you see how it's like, even I'm like establishing myself as I'm anti this,
right?
Right. And I say that jokingly, but I hope this will be a shift in consciousness where we just get back to a reasonable world of some understanding. I'm not just talking about this political spectrum that we get enmeshed in, say, as Americans, or, I have friends in England and Brexit, blah, blah, blah. But on a higher level, like, we really can attain a true peace and a true love, and really could be sort of, I joke, but sort of a blissed out year. I'm telling you, if everyone maneuvered through life really letting go and trusting that says, oh, you know what, this is where I'm at. And then from here, that energy frequency of trusting that will change your frequency to provide the opportunities you should be doing. And the bigger destiny will keep coming to you. So it really is a little bit more about attracting, but through changing our vibrational frequency and just maneuver with sometimes the things that come in front of you. And that's not to say, oh, well, it is what it is. And I'm just going to be, living or playing with the hand I was dealt, or, all this different sayings. This isn't like a fate driven idea. This is getting into a true peace.
Well, and I get what you're saying where it's about. So I mean, I guess there's a question of how much is it that there's this frequency that's available to us because of the numerology of the year, and how much of it is like, this is just the energy that we're kind of evolving into. I mean, when I hear you talk about it, the words that kept coming to my mind were gentle and grace. And just the idea that if the frequency of this year is to embody more grace and being more gentle to ourselves, to others, it's such a different energy than the year of 3, where it's like professional and it's like work driven and self driven and kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's very different. I mean, when you work with these like I do, you start to see, oh, there's a real build-up pattern here. So last year we were strong, we were the boss, we were pro, we really are like, we're going to build, we're going to be dynamic. This year now, it's like, let's just say, so 2019, 3 year was like, I have this brilliant idea. I want to open a cafe, right? This is just an easy example, like where I have an idea for a business. I'm going to build, right? Businesses are just something we work with and building. And now we've opened it, the 4 year, or we've built it. The 4 year is sort of this energy of, okay, now we've just sort of open for business. And we're going to sort of allow, and that energy is going to come in. But, we always have to use all of these energies. How does the 4 really affect anything? The way I see it is because every single day of the year, somehow you're going to be seeing 2019. Mm-hmm. And your psyche completely picks up on that. And the number 4, I mean, you're going to be seeing 2020 or 2019. Your psyche knows that's a 3. Your psyche knows 2020 is a 4. So it's always, and there's a resonant frequency in the spiritual teachings about the number 4 that come out of nature. And a lot of times people ask me, oh, aren't numbers like it's a man-made construct? That's total fucking bullshit. It's not like if you take 4 apples, there's 4 apples because we've assigned a language for that number. If we had no language for these numbers and you started arranging apples in patterns of 3s and 4s and 10s, you'd get a sense. You get a sense of the energy. Those exist. Sure. There's always a debate, even in mathematics. Is mathematics discovered or is it created? And I'm a little bit more on these things are discovered as roots, patterns of nature. But so the 4 it has an effect. I was amazed to see the 3 year, how much people did. We also saw more confrontation, more assertiveness in the world, things like that. Mm-hmm. So 4, it's going to open up. Let's let it open up this love. And I just hope for the world it opens up compassion for each other and the planet.
And so for us to use it as a guiding light, kind of as a way to, I don't know, I like to look at things like, okay, what can I use to inform if we create our reality every day, through the decisions we make and through the thoughts we think and through the, the actions we take, I think of it like it's always, if I'm not aware and I'm just kind of reacting and I'm not purposeful, then I tend to not be as dynamic or is even heart-centered because I'm just kind of in my natural, like, kind of like human state where I'm just like reacting. So when I think of the numerology, at least in how I can like practically apply it, and I'm asking you if this is kind of the right path to take or if you have something to add to it. I like to think of it as like, this is what I'm using to inform the whole frequency of my year, right? That everything is coming under the umbrella of compassion and love and grace and forgiveness.
and acceptance. And on our next 9 year, I'll really get into grace, sophisticated grace. But no, absolutely. And that's the thing, because even when, and I don't deal with like skeptics and stuff like that. I'm doing what I'm doing. If you're not into it, go do something else you're into.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like sort of how does numerology work, I really sum it up the way you sum it up. Even if you don't believe there's any energetic meetings or frequencies, well, here's some concept of a spiritual teaching. Why don't we go through the year with that? But I love the numerology because it's the framework of here it is, right? You can really get lost in a psychobabble insanity of astrology, in my humble opinion,
Yes.
as well as numerology. You know, I get people, I mean, I'm grateful for the messages and that people are paying attention, but I'll get some really long messages. Like I see like, you know, it'll be 40 numbers and I'm like, what does it mean? And, you know, that's like, it's a message for you. You got to tap into it. Or it means like you need a job. You need to get a job. I literally told that to one guy. He did need a job. Like he wanted a reading. I was like, you don't need a reading. You literally need a job. I mean, we got to be real here, but it's really nice that we can sum up, okay, I'm going to go with this sort of mindset. So I'm going to go into this with love and acceptance. I'm going to forgive. I find it a cool play on words that even the word forgive, essentially, it does have the word for in it. And when we really just accept and we let go of so much stuff in the past, and everyone has different levels of experiences, but we can just all hold on to stuff, you know, even the smallest things, whether it's traumas or perceived traumas, or I always joke about this woman who cut me in line for this vegan mac and cheese like 2 years ago, and she cut right in line and took like the last order, and like I joke about my resentment about it. So like I kind of joke, that's a light funny situation, but this is my year to just say, okay, I'm gonna let go of that. She was doing her best. I'm gonna move on.
Oh yeah, you did that 40-day challenge too, where you talked about that. You know, just to
We do our
imagine
best.
to do their best. That's a great practical application of this stuff.
I so failed at that, but I did do my best.
That's the point though, right? I mean, this is something that I've noticed a lot when I think of how we're, you know, a lot of times we embrace the self-love / kind of neo-spirituality as we're trying to make it religion by being dogmatic about it. Right? Like, because I think there's something in the human psyche that wants to hold on to dogma because there's something really egoic about it. Do you know what I'm saying? And so when I think about it, I'm like, okay, it's like, as humans, we tend to want to lean into this idea that if I do something exactly right, then I won, or there's like a way to measure. And I think there's something good about being able to measure growth and all of that. But oftentimes we're just doing what we've always done. We're just calling it something else. Does that make sense?
Oh, 1,000%. There's actually a teaching in magic that is like, hey, you never judge somebody else's spirituality, but you also never judge or their own spirituality, their spiritual growth, which also means you don't judge your own spiritual growth. And often the times in which like one thinks, you know, they're completely failing at life, something will open up. And sometimes when we think we're totally kicking ass on some level, we realize where we need to direct. And it's not really in terms of like fail or succeed. But I like this idea of really not judging. You know, I think we live in a very judgmental, you know, even what we touched on earlier, like woke culture is totally fanatical. It's like,
It's
literally not any different than the same, like, you know, extremists freaking out about cartoonists or Christians going crazy over, you know, gay rights or whatever your tradition is. Many traditions are against gay rights, but it's not even a Christian tradition. There's people that claim those titles and those labels. It's totally fanatical. It ties into astrology, though. My theory on a lot of that is Pluto and Sagittarius people. Sagittarius energy it's very compassionate, loving, and elevated, and it's ruled by Jupiter. And the number 4 actually is Jupiter in Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. So we have this high wisdom, high compassion, high love. The downside of 4 energy is total. It's supposed to be open-minded. It's completely judgmental, fanatical, insanity. So it can go either way. I think it's up to us and people listening and many other people that are providing something that gives compassion to the world and the planet.
Well, it's great that you brought in the polarity too, because like you said, there's always the balance, right? So when you try to be compassionate, there's going to be an element of, being aware of where you're being dogmatic or being aware of where you're being judgmental. And that's how we learn, right? Through the extremes. Yeah.
Well, Hilary, that's another great point. It's why I love talking to you in the podcast. And we message each other pretty regularly. And there's always good insight. But with numerology, that's the thing. That one number has this spectrum of extremes. Because like one extreme of 4, like, hey, let's just keep it simple. I'm loving and heart-centered and compassionate, right? I accept you. The extreme of that is totally shut off, judgmental, closed-minded. The other extreme of that is I'm just sort of so open and loving, it becomes sort of enabling, apathetic to mildly complacent, where you just are ineffectual and decide to take no action. Like, okay, well, I'll just accept it as it is. It is what it is. I'm never going to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. We still are always maneuvering with action and intent and purpose. One thing I find in my work, I guess, it's just more my experience, but I feel like this seems reasonably true, especially in my sort of spiritual to new agey to life improvement to self-help, life coaching, blah, 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 is people really, people sell these one fix solutions, but we really have a culture of people want like, well, what's the magic key, right? What's the one trick? What's the one be all end all? If I just do this technique, everything will come to me. Do it. And it always seems to come down to, well, do I just receive it? Or do I have to go out and make it happen? And it's like, you do both. Right.
Well, and even that people want, we're trained to think that there's like some magical solution, like just take this pill and everything will be fine. It's like that it's always changing, right? Even if you have to take a pill for something, like your dosage is going to have to change over time, or think like we are always moving and evolving. So this idea that like this one thing's going to work, like it might work for today, but
yeah, it's like sometimes we have to let go, sometimes we have to hold on, and we're actually simultaneously doing both. We have to know what to let go of, we have to know what to hold on to. And sometimes the dose has to change, so it's just easy to peddle sort of one trick pony solutions of like, here's the method, here's the way. So what I like about numerology is when you really work with it, you become mindful of the different spectrums. For example, my personal numerology for this year of 2019, it's getting confusing because this is going into the future. We're talking about 2020, but we're existing in 2019. I'm already like, it's over.
I know. I always feel like the year's over in November. I'm like, okay, we're moving on to the next.
we still have like over a month of like being a boss and a pro and doing things and
that's right,
kicking butt. But for example, the number 5, which was my personal. So you also have a personal numerology for the year, and 5 is really like super action.
And how do you get your personal numerology for the year? Where are those numbers?
Well, I have classes coming out on that, but it's based on your birthday. I'm actually writing up personal write-ups for the numerology, which I'm going to sell, and it's going to be we'll send like a PDF, but I'm selling like a really nice printed version of all of the lessons about that number for you for the year. So if you're having a 4-year or 5-year, and then it's in a 6-year, whatever the case is. So, but I need the birth. So I have to figure it out through individual birthdays.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you were saying you were a 5.
5 is really an assertive energy. It likes to cut to the chase. It's kind of a destructive energy, but in a good way. When you use it right, it's like an editor, right? So 5 is this energy of an editor. But the negative side of, and 5 is the physical body. 5 is Mars, it's power, it's action, right? Like I always say, you're using this energy to brush your teeth and you're destroying plaque and you're using force to move your arm and your hand and all this kind of stuff. But the negative side is it can be like fierce and argumentative and reactionary, so on some level it's violent. Doesn't mean you're getting into violent altercations, but this was a year for me personally to be mindful of those spectrums. Like, where am I asserting myself to cut off things that don't serve a purpose? Or where am I just maybe getting pissed off at someone, is double parked and taking up in a street that a lot of us rely on street parking, living in Los Angeles, for example. So am I getting resentful and angry? So for the 4-year, the numerology helps us sort of look at the spectrum and say, oh, I'm just getting sort of apathetic. Am I using 4 as an excuse to essentially be lazy? Just be like, oh, well, the garbage is overflowing. It doesn't smell good. I'm like reading a book and I just don't feel like taking it out. And then I can be like, well, it's 4 energy, right? So again, are you going to be ineffectual or are you going to be shut off? So it's really a tool for psychology to look at yourself and how you're, as you said, are you responding or are you just reacting?
So I want to talk about the fact that we're ending a full decade and kind of what the significance is for ending a full decade, and just thoughts of how we can ritualize or honor the lessons that we've learned and reflect on the last 10 years of growth. And then kind of what do we expect from the 2020s? Is there something?
Well, this is a great question. And I was actually looking at it and it's been coming up in my world. I honestly, as far as numerology, I mean, the decade ending, I'm open to even getting more wisdom on this, because like, is it okay? We transition into a new decade. I mean, on one level, there's a psychic collective where we could say, hey, this is a new decade. It's a new cycle. It's a new pattern. But within that decade, the one thing I will say is, from a numerological point of view, we're always going to be looking at some level at the number 2, right? We're always going to be looking at 20, right? That every single day for the next 10 years, that's going to be a part of the collective psyche.
Right.
And even when you look at 2020, visually, it's very appealing to me.
Yes,
like, I love this
so
2020. Well, and if you look at it, it feels fluid, right? It feels open. Well, the energy of 2 that will be with us for the next 10 years is a very open, very fluid, very intuitive, potentially it's also 2 is a very loving number as well, but 2 is more human connection. Like, 2 is just 2 wants to fall in love, right? 2 is like, I'm totally in love with you. So we really could have a reset on, like, one, like, all the sort of 10s, teens. It was all about us, me, my. I feel like that's a fanatical energy that we've been seeing. 2 is like us. 2 is about us. 2 is called the negative mind, which means it's the empty space that loves fulfillment. So people are going to be, my take is that this general next 10-year phase is people are going to really long much deeper for fulfillment. The catchphrase for this energy of 2 is longing to belong. And so that could take a weird extreme where people create their own weird societies. Like, we've seen all these, from white supremacist groups to you name it. And there's like in LA, there's a new spiritual group every 5 minutes popping up. I think there'll be a lot of changes towards peace and people really saying, well, what do I do to get in touch with my soul? No matter what, people are going to be striving for fulfillment. And true fulfillment comes from the soul and divinity, from my point of view, and most spiritual teachings. So it's important for people like us even, and a lot of people listening, and people that teach something with spiritual teachings, whatever it is, whatever tradition or whatever the techniques, like, we have to provide opportunities for people to get in touch with something deeper, because we're going to want it. And we really, if we do this right, the 2 energy for the next 10 years keeps everyone really connected. But I do want to touch on something interesting about 20. 20 in and of itself, and this is where 2020 and numerology goes much deeper than just, oh, here's the one number.
Right.
The one number solution is that 20 is a number, and I base all of this, all my numerology comes from mystical Kabbalah and a technique called gematria. And gematria is a very fluid, meditative, to me, it's a very high art, and you really transcend all limitations, dimensions, consciousness, and physical existence. But 20 relates to a Hebrew letter called Kaf, which is the palm of your hand. And it's where we receive the wisdom. And so we have this double 2020, which also is the fortune card, the numerical equivalent of the fortune card in the tarot, because it's attributed to this Hebrew letter Kaf, has a numerical value of 20, which ties into Jupiter. So 2020 in of itself should be a year to receive an insane amount of blessings, opportunity, and wisdom. And sort of on a simple note, it's lucky. Like it's good luck energy.
It does feel lucky when you say that. I was just thinking that as I was kind of staring at it. I'm looking at my notes and I'm looking right at the number, and I was just thinking it really is such an appealing, aesthetic, lucky feeling number. So that's great.
Too. And if you look at like 2021, it seems way more already. It seems more intense and more severe. And now, and we have 2 + 1 is 3, which is a powerhouse number. But then we have, that'll be a 5-year in 2021. And that's a year of power and assertion and really like getting rid of all this BS that just doesn't serve you. But we have these 2. So we have the 2s, but all for the next 10 years, we're dealing with 20. And this is great fortune. This is the palm of your hand. It said our destinies are written in our palms. Mm-hmm. So this is a year to like really be, or this is a decade rather, to really be fulfilled by your true destiny, which is really getting in touch with the soul. So that's the way it's supposed to go. That's the way a lot of people are going to go. But sometimes it's like, how is the rest of the world going to handle this frequency?
Yeah, that's always interesting. Well, especially because we're so much more of a global society now. I think it's always interesting to think, okay, well, what was going on in the 19 teens versus the 1920s? And then kind of compare, 100 years later. And I think a lot of times when you go to sum up a decade that just finished, like we're still in it, right? We're not done yet. It kind of takes a few years to really be like, what was that all about? What did that really mean collectively?
Oh, no, absolutely. Like we can't see it now. And then we look back, even I love those like shows that'll be like, here's the 80s or the 90s. Yes. And they just like point out with comedians like fads and movies and things like that. And you're like, oh yeah, what the hell was going on? But I'm hoping, I'm super optimistic about 2020. I'm pretty optimistic in general. Again, like these numbers, every single number has its strong suit and what it's supposed to be used for. The good news is sometimes when we are kind of go on the sort of deficient side of that number, it doesn't that's okay. It means we have access to the sort of the virtues of it. Like in Kabbalah, certain energy fields, you'll say these are the virtues of this energy, and then this is the vice of this energy.
So there's always the shadow and the sun, kind of, there's always the moon and the sun.
Yeah, totally. But just think, this is a year, the fortune card in the tarot, our destinies, like could be, you're seeing a year, it's like a decade. But especially 2020, it's just like, let's just keep it on the note. This is like really fortunate opportunities and possibilities. How do we allow that? Well, by getting into that compassionate, accepting heart space and finally just say, okay, you know what? I have all these ambitions. I have all these desires. I have all these regrets. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to just keep allowing the ball to be moved forward. And I'm going to also keep moving forward myself. And this is like I'm so excited about 2020.
Yeah, me too. I like it. I'm always ready for the year to be over by the end of it, though. I'm always like, okay, good riddance. So the big eclipses are coming up towards the end of the year. And what should we expect with this? I mean, they were saying, I was reading about it. It was saying December 25th and 26th, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah, I think for us, isn't it the 26th? I'll have to. I have a really good astrologer, Tashi Powers, is a really good friend of mine, and she's also my neighbor. So I just I get all the exact dates from her. So she's like my little cheat on the dates. But yeah, it's all like that sort of Christmas time. Well, in general, regardless of the time of the year or what the if we're dealing with Capricorn energy at that point, eclipses are really a time of doors opening and doors closing. And it's more a time that I see of doors closing. So if you really want to harness an energy of an eclipse, you really can assess, okay, what are some things that I could let go of that are holding me down? We're all going to, like the 26th, 25th, we're dealing with themes of Capricornian energy. I believe in the world, we may see a disruption of old power struggles and leadership. So we're in a time of powerful leadership, like during Capricorn. And for us as individuals, this is a time of our own authority and leadership. So it's interesting because this also deals with the number 3. 3 is Saturn, and Saturn rules Capricorn. And this is the sort of where are you going to come into at the end of the year and sort of finalize this energy of, I can step into my true authority. And and also that Capricornian energy just sees the most direct route to the top of the mountain. And it just doesn't want to fool around. The negative side, it totally is too serious, button up, and doesn't want to have any fun. But I think for the world, we're going to see a huge disruption in people in power. That really is breaking down old power dynamics and power struggles. And I think for us, it's like any eclipse is a time, like it's a time to make a huge leap in your growth. And so whatever each individual is going through, it's like, what can you close the door on? Now, a lot of people get really freaked out by eclipses. The thing is, I have seen some crazy stuff from each eclipse.
Like what? Give some examples. I'm dying to hear.
Last eclipse, my friend just had a baby and her husband died on the eclipse. I have a client whose father died on the eclipse. Someone very close to me, that's family, had a very high level job. They literally got fired on the eclipse. Now, in that situation, I think it worked out to a better thing. But those are like heavy, real stuff. Even my friend's dog of 16 years died on this past eclipse. So I feel like even that dog knew, okay, this is an energy. This is a good energy to leave and go on my way. So don't think, okay, people around you are going to die, but it's an intense energy. No, but I
feel that way with myself. I mean, I've started to observe the eclipses. Maybe it's been 3 or 4 years now. I mean, I haven't done it my whole life, but the last couple of years, I was shocked when I became aware of it, how much physically there's always something that goes on with me during an eclipse, whether I'm just exhausted or I can't get out of bed that day or whatever, or I have like tons of energy and it's hard to know what it's going to be. And then I also think it's just, like you said, it does have a death-like quality to it, where it's, I mean, in your examples, it was literal death.
It's actual death.
Right. But I mean, but it feels a bit like that, and I think until we actually, part of me believes that the whole reason we're here is to learn how to die and learn how to die and learn how to die and learn how to die. Right. Like over and over and over again.
Right. And
both literally and figuratively.
Learn how to reincarnate. We live in I mean, we kind of, there's always that sort of polarity in this dimension we're incarnated into. It is. So like, to take the fear out of it, I mean, these things that happen were things that people had no control over. I still think my extended family member who lost their job, I thought it was a blessing because they still got their huge retirement, and it was 1 year for. I was like, it's an early retirement. I don't know, but I could see where it really is going to cut at you and hit your ego, and it's something they dedicated most of their life to. Like, I get it, but the energy of death, like even in magic, there's a teaching: we die daily. So really think of it, but when you die, there's then there's a transformation, there's a rebirth.
Yeah, it's what comes after.
So really let it be sort of a birthing, rebirth portal. So celebrate the death as a transformation so powerful that you cannot go back to the old. And just like that,
you're
door
forever changed.
Exactly. So I would embrace that. We're here to learn, to grow. We want to make changes. Everybody wants to make changes in their life, in theory. And then like the eclipse is just, here's a tremendous catalyst to do it. But like, are you going to be a putz and wind up on the other side, or let things implode? And it doesn't always mean like, again, somebody's going to die, but I bring those examples up because the energy is powerful. I've had really good eclipses lately. Like the last eclipse this summer, I was like, I could feel such a tremendous like weight off of me, and such a momentum and a moving and an opening forward. We're also dealing in a lot of Cancer energy too, but then the opposite of Cancer is Capricorn, and we're dealing with. I think
that's why it's so hard for me. I'm a Capricorn, and so the Cancer. I was thinking I had the exact opposite experience this summer, but then I felt so good afterwards. I always feel like garbage during the eclipse, and then about 3 days later, I feel great. It's like
it probably is gonna. That totally makes sense. Like I always joke, like whenever there's a moon, like a new moon or full moon Aquarius, and I have moon Aquarius, I'm like, I don't have to get weird or anything. I just will feel it. Like I joke, I get like sort of weird about it, but yeah.
What do you mean by getting weird about it?
Like either some sort of strange depression, just sort of like super heady and neurotic, things like that. I allow myself, now I know it's a choice to be that way, but sometimes, this eclipse is going to be heavy and intense, and it's on a American holiday. We can just, if we stay in bed sometimes, it's not the end of the world.
I've discovered for me something that helps me when there is a cosmic event, if I can schedule for it. Sometimes you just have to live your life and power through, but where I can actually go do like a full hour and a half Kundalini yoga, or if I up the self-care on those days and allow myself to feel whatever I'm feeling instead of judging myself, like, why are you acting so this or so that, or why haven't you got enough done, that I tend to experience it all a little with more ease and with more grace.
Well, and Capricorn in particular wants to get it done, wants to keep moving, wants to keep succeeding, wants to keep going to the mountaintop. It's a very, very ambitious energy field. But with astrology too, we always use the opposite spectrum when we look at its opposite, Cancer. These eclipses always happen within those dynamics. Like a few years ago, it was Leo, Aquarius energy. And it's Cancer's nurturing, self-care, love, caring, and you need that caring and that self-care in order to really cultivate a discipline. I think it's easier to be disciplined and want to be successful if you're also coming from a nurturing, caring place of love. This is also the parental dynamic. Like some traditions say, you'll hear mostly that Capricornian energy is paternal, is the father energy, and Cancer is maternal, is the mother energy. Now, the way I was taught, it actually is flipped. But either way, and I think in modern culture and society and the world we live in, I just think it's parent energy. So we have these two structures. One is like, loving through sort of disciplined, and one is loving through just pure hugs and kisses and nurturing. And we need that dynamic. We need both. And especially for you, Hilary, it sounds like, okay, it's okay to put in that little self-care. It's only going to help your work ethic, whether it's your actual job or the work ethic you put towards your spirituality. I love the energy of Capricorn because it's so ambitious and it's a very exalted sign. So it's going to be like that. These eclipses, it's going to be a time for people to really step it up. And no, because the downside too, Cancer opposite dynamic is, I always joke with some people, I'm like, you're going to self-carry your way into oblivion.
Yes. Yeah. There's an element of that too, right? It's kind of it's a sister to the woke culture. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
It's like their cousin, their best friends or their cousins or something.
So, self-care oblivion. Now, I personally am probably more like you, where I'm like, I feel guilty for it or something like that. And so my reaction sometimes, I'll get sick because like the universe is like, hey, just chill out for a couple
Take
days.
A break, right?
So it's always these dynamics and this balance, but I'm like learned to like, I'm looking forward to the eclipse as like an exciting big event to make great leaps in my growth in my consciousness.
I love that. That's great. So I want to talk really quick. Just what are your thoughts on this, on like the humanity, like humans' collective evolution? I feel like we've touched on this a little bit, but in general, my observation, especially the last few months, is that people's nerves are fried and people are exhausted from overstimulation. And a lot of this, I think we're settling more into the fall, but I really feel it major at, August, September months when we're kind of in those dog days of summer and the weather hasn't quite changed depending on where you are in the world. And there's just this people are overstimulated from technology and they're fearful of the environment or they're fearful of the future. Do you think this has something to do with collective evolutions, or is there like something written in the stars about this? Like, what do you think? I mean, this is just a debate. Obviously, I know there's not like an actual answer.
I mean, like written in the stars that we're going to like pollute ourselves to death. Well, I can only imagine being a kid now, in most of the sort of, especially in the Western world. I feel like you're getting really indoctrinated with the message of death and like, this is it. Like everything is ending now. I think that would be pretty freaky. I don't remember how old you were, but you're probably like, I think we might be similar age, but I grew up with like the whole idea of, for me, 70s and 80s until like this all Cold War. So there was every day this threat that we have this serious enemy, existential enemy of Russia that could kill us any moment. And I feel like some of the environmentalists are creating that psychology and that fear, but at the same time, these are all things that have to be addressed. I mean, I've been doing this essentially my whole life. I've been aware of it. I do think that we are in a time more than ever with all of the technology, all of the bombardment of information. And because we live in the information age, and this is the age of Aquarius, which is really an age of, it's beyond an age of information. What the side effect is, we have all the information and there's just a blowout. This is why I think it's more important than ever that people need to take up some type of spiritual practice, whether it be like yoga, whether it's like I meditate, I go to the gym, I do something sacred, but people need the tools to access their souls more than any other time, I feel like, in history, because we're so bombarded with the information and this sort of blowout of our psyches, and it's the information just is meaningless. The
Right.
only thing that I really believe, the only thing that is of true value now is that experience of your soul, or just an experience.
Well, it's certainly the most fulfilling thing that you can do, right? Aside from like pure acts of love and service, I think those are also as which connect you to your highest self, right?
Right. And there's many different, I like to, you look at yoga and there's 8 limbs of yoga. There's a quote in the magical tradition that says we study and practice, or we practice the 8 limbs of yoga to condition us for the fight.
Mm.
And that fight literally can just be navigating the world and like the overload of information. I mean, if you can people get so lost in social media and arguments and politics, it's insane.
Well, I even find just falling into the scroll, like there's times where I recognize that I feel my jaw tightening or my neck tightening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how long have I been on this thing? And I've finally set up a bunch of things that like timers that, so I catch myself to pull myself out of the freaking vortex. You know what I mean?
A really good trick is turn off all of your notifications,
Mm-hmm.
and that, at least for me. And then, like, because I'll check, and I usually will respond to. I can't respond to everything just because sometimes the volume or how it comes in. But like, I don't want people to think I'm not interested or unengaged. But that was like a little trick. But just, for those of you listening, like really find something. Like my biggest recommendations are always going to be some type of meditation or some sort of spiritual sacred act. Like you said, service. I mean, that's a spiritual practice in really every single tradition. And it's also one of the sort of 8 limbs. It's a yogic practice, but it's a Christian. I don't know of a spiritual tradition that doesn't involve service, and service that's just selfless service.
Right.
So something devotional, something to be of service, something that gets your energy going, even if it's some type of breath work. But as far as like the world, like sometimes I wonder, like, wow, like even if the world ends tomorrow and we environmentally just suffocated and blew everybody up, on one level, it's like, okay, so now what? Like, where are these souls will incarnate somewhere else? So I know that sounds like as if I'm like, screw it.
Well,
I'm not
you're
going to
looking at it from way, way up, right? Like in the shamanic tradition, they'd say that you're looking at it from eagle, right? You're looking at it from the collective, from space. You're not down in the mire. So like at the highest point, I totally get what you're saying. That's exactly like, so what if we kill ourselves? So what? But then it's like, but what if we kill ourselves? Like, it just depends on your perceptual state, right?
And I'm not like, well, but my training, what I also personally believe, maybe it's just how I was trained too, but it's like, we do live here and we care for where we live.
Yes.
And we care, like we have the planet. We're making so many wonderful technological breakthroughs and so much more awareness of health and spirituality and mind body connections and spiritual connections. Even science is opening up so many new doors. So it's like, we could get so caught up in the temporary politics of it all. It's mind boggling. So on one level, I do stay really optimistic, but I also just, I'm going to keep doing my job of doing what I do and sharing what I know. But, even in Kundalini yoga tradition, it's so important that we help and teach others have some experience. And some people, they're going to take it forever, wherever they're at. I've met people that just did like a 3-minute, like little breath thing here and there once in a while, a couple of times a week when they feel stressed out. And it just gives them more energy. What we need more than anything is something that gives us true energy. And when we have that energy, we can just maneuver through our lives. And my spiritual teacher, Tej, one time said we did this intense Kundalini set, and we were like, everyone's like, you could feel it in your body. Everyone's all sort of yoga high. And she was like, we do this practice so we could navigate shopping at Ralph's, which is like, those of you who don't know, that's just the super like
Yes.
standard regular grocery store, I think kind of all over California. But, it's like, cause she had gone in that day to buy like Kleenexes for the class. She like went through, there was like a huge fight happening. It was like, she said it was crazy, but essentially so we can navigate ourselves in the world, like
Right.
big and small. So we just need to, there's all this with this new year coming in, all this energy coming through. We just need to do something that helps change our inners or our caliber.
I
The
love
more
that.
we work on ourselves and the more we make ourselves a fit receptacle, the more we do something to change our caliber, then we are able to receive things that match that caliber. So it's up to us to do a lot of that work. We're going to receive what we're supposed to receive, but we can make change by shifting that within.
That's
And
beautiful.
this will be a year to really make those changes. Like, how much is going to come to you if you're just just full of resentment and bitterness, and you're just pissed off about the past and
I'll tell you something
how everybody wronged you.
that I started doing recently that is really simple. And I did it because one of my friends invited me and my kids to do this on a Sunday, was just go clean up. Like, we went and got those little garbage picker uppers. You can order them on Amazon for like $15 or whatever. I got a little bag of, just plastic bag and I just went around my neighborhood after Halloween, because there's like candy everywhere. And I just was cleaning up the street, and I couldn't believe first of all, how satisfying it was. I felt like I was the greatest person in the world, right? I mean, I'm not, right? I'm just like doing this thing. But I was realizing as I was doing it, how much more my appreciation for my neighborhood became, because I was taking ownership of the area in terms of saying, I'm going to put my love and attention into this, and I'm going to pick up the garbage, and it's something. And if you don't want to have to think of, I think people sometimes think of service as like, I got to go volunteer somewhere and I've got to spend a bunch of time. But I really think it's something as simple as that. I do that now. I try to do it like once a week, and it brings me so much joy just to do that. I feel like I'm loving my planet. I'm helping. I mean, so just an idea for someone.
I love that. And I want to share a sort of similar story years ago, when I was really at that time, like very, like, I'm always a student of magic, but that's when I was like very formal. And one of the practices I had to do, there was like a whole series of practices you do throughout certain times of the year. Service is a huge part of that tradition, but you're usually working on service and helping, like, with the work that we're doing and things like that. But one of the practices, and I had to sort of do it as a homework assignment, was like, just help out a total stranger. And I was like, what? I was like, that seems weird or awkward. But I was like, well, I got to just do it, because I'm not going to say, no, I didn't do it. And my neighbor was just raking their yard in the fall. And I just like grabbed a rake and started helping him out, because he always sort of had a little thing that he like limped around. I don't know what the condition was. And that same experience that you had, all of a sudden, I just like, at first I was like, I'm just doing it because I'm supposed to. But then within like a minute, and he was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I just started raking up these leaves. I didn't really know the guy at all at that point. And I like literally had this feeling so much opened up in that moment from many, many years ago for me, that I literally was like, oh, I really love helping people. And it was exactly that sort of like blissed out, like, oh, I love my neighborhood. I totally love my neighbor.
Yes.
Even though they had annoying dogs that barked.
Exactly.
But
it's like
I helped him rake his whole thing. And then he was like, oh my God, like, thank you. He was like so touched for it, because he was like struggling. I didn't even know he was struggling as much as he did. But I just like went and did it. And like, that's why I love your garbage story. It's like, you're not hashtagging like saving the environment. You're not yelling at the UN. You're not making people, I mean, on one end,
nothing big. It was like, and what was really interesting is how many people, when they see you, there's an immediate thing that goes on where they feel they feel instantly guilty and then they feel grateful. It was an interesting thing. It was an interesting practice because I'm like, I don't care that I'm doing this because I'm enjoying it and I'm just trying to do some good for the day, but you become a mirror for other people, And so, you get very interesting responses. And I think, that's part of that is the ripple effect. And I'm not saying that I'm some example or whatever. It's just, I'm just a human like anybody else, but it's something so simple that anyone can do. You can order that little garbage picker up and you never have to touch it. You just put it in the thing and and you really start to get connected to your neighborhood and your neighbors because people come talk to you when you do it too. They're like, thank you so much. And all of that. So, and
that's just like doing it. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people and there's a lot of us like they just do the service. It's selfless service. You don't have to, tweet and hashtag about it. But I think like, I really love that because I think it's also easy to be like, well, we're totally effed anyway. A lot of the environmental stuff, we're getting so caught up that it's just, us and our recycling and being aware and conscious, and that's all part of it. But then you're like, oh, what is a huge corporation? How much pollution does, Coca-Cola or the freaking military produce in about a second?
Right.
Is probably more than any individual can ever do in their entire lifetime.
Right.
But so there's sometimes too, it's like, what the hell? But, it's just like, doing what you can on a bigger level and see people getting involved. I don't know. I think everyone listening, try it out. Just do something helpful, especially even somebody you don't know and some little thing. It just opens up so much.
It really does. So Remington, I want to wrap it up here. We're kind of running out of time. And what are some of the events our listeners can look forward to from you? I've really enjoyed several of your webinars that you've offered. And so do you have anything coming up that or in Instagram lives or whatever?
I'll post on my Instagram, which is at the Mystical Arts, to I usually like to give a little notice if I'm going to do like a little live talk. Right now, a lot of the main stuff is about going to be coming into the 2024 year. So I'm going to have a 4-year workshop, either right at the end of the year, like first couple days of the new year, as well as numerology about your numerology for the year. And then I have a psychic powers workshop. I am doing that at Rama Institute in person in Venice, California. But that's also, you can do that online through Rama TV. It was supposed to be this month, but it just worked out a lot better for us to postpone it because a lot of people are out of town. So that's going to be, well, that's not till March. I'm pushing, maybe it could be in January, but the main thing now is going to be all the numerology stuff for 2020, which is like a year of just great blessings and love and compassion. And maybe like we'll see a shift. I really pray we just see a shift in the world. Like we have this beautiful planet when we have all the resources that everybody needs. And we're supposed to have a planet of abundance for everybody. And I think that this next year will start to plant a little seed to put it in that direction.
Well, I think too, we also, by nature of the algorithm and the way that the media works and all that, is we only hear the worst, right? We hear the absolute extremes, and not to say that they aren't happening or that it's not a problem, but I think to your point, I think there's a lot of people out there, at least the people I talk to, that are trying really hard every day to be a better person, to be a better citizen, to be a better friend. So in my heart of hearts, I'm optimistic, like you said, that you are as well. So thanks again so much for your time, Remington. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Hilary, it's always a pleasure, and hopefully I'll see you in person if you make it down to LA.
Absolutely.
Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit Intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.